Alright, this is part 2 of fraction tutorials, looking at simplifying fractions. And the hardest part and the first step of all of these is to look for common factors in both your numerator and denominator. And common factors are numbers that will divide into both the numerator and denominator. So an example of that is if we were looking for a common factor for 3, and actually I'm going to do 9 and 12. The common factor for both of those, the number that divides into both of them, would be 3. One that we'll use a lot as well is 2. So if we were looking for a common factor of 10 and 20, we could use 2. Any even number, 2 works. So we'll use that a fair bit through this lesson. Okay, so if we've got 4 over 8, we're looking for common factors for the numerator and denominator. And the common factor for 4 and 8 is 4. So I'm going to divide both the numerator by 4 and the denominator by 4. And that leaves us with 1 over 2. So there you go. That's it. That's as simple as we can get. Nothing simplifies more than 1 over 2. Getting a bit tricky here, some big numbers. If we're looking at 33 over 44, the highest common factor is 11. I think the only common factor actually here is 11. So 33 divided by 11 is 3, and 44 divided by 11 is 4. So we're just simplifying these fractions. I'll show you 2 methods for this one. It's a bit of a tricky one. 32 and 48. The highest common factor is 16, and that goes into both 32 and 48. Now, I'm not expecting you to know your 16 times tables, but this is going to end up with 2 over 3 is our final solution. If you're getting stuck like that though, if there's a problem, something you should notice about both of these numbers is that they are even. So let's go to our trusty number 2, which always works for even numbers, and let's just start cutting it down. So 32 divided by 2 is 16, half of 32 is 16. And half of 48 is 24. And you'll notice again here that we have 2 even numbers. So let's use our trusty 2 again. And you don't have to always write it out like this. If you know what you're dividing by, you can skip some of these steps. 16 divided by 2 is 8, and 24 divided by 2 is 12. And we've still got some 2's to do. So 2 and 2. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. 12 divided by 2 is 6. And we're still going to divide both of these by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So if you're getting stuck or you're in a test and it's a bit nerve-wracking or you're making mistakes, that's a great way to just cut numbers down. If you can find anything that divides into the numerator and denominator, go for it, and then you can hopefully simplify eventually down to the same result, which was 2/3 and 2/3. Same answer. One of them had a bit more working over here, but 16 times tables, certainly not my strong point. Probably not yours the same, but hopefully they are. That would be great if that's the case. This one here, 28 and 14. In this case, actually, 14 goes into both 28 and 14. But again, you could use your dividing by 2 solution again. 28 divided by 14 is 2, and 14 divided by 14 is 1. Whenever we end up with a denominator that is 1, the number on the bottom, it's asking us how many 1's go into the numerator, in this case 2, and so our answer is just 2. If you want to think of it, you're just really getting rid of that 1 as the denominator, because obviously 1's going to go into whatever number you're looking at as the numerator that many times. Bit of a tricky one here. I'm not sure what the biggest common factor is, but I know that anything ending with a 5 is divisible by 5. So I'm going to start with that. That's a pretty tricky one. So 5 goes into 65, how many times? 13 times. That's a pretty tricky one. And 5 into 15, 3 times. I think that's all we can do. If we wanted to write that as a mixed number, 3 into 13, so we'd go 3, 6, 9, 12. So 3, 6, 9, 12, that's 4, and we're left with 1/3 left over. Alright, let's have a look at this next one. It's a little tricky again. Whenever we end with zeros, we can divide both sides by 10. So let's start by doing that, and that cuts those zeros away. So I'm left with 128 over 8. And again, I'm not sure what goes into both of those, so I'm going to go with 2 and 2. These are some pretty big numbers here. The way I think about this is 120 divided by 2 is 60. But then I've got 8 divided by 2, which is 4, so 64. So half of 128 is 64. 8 divided by 2 is 4. I've got a feeling that 4 would work for both of these, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to use 2 again, because I know that they're both even numbers. 64 divided by 2 is 32. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Again, even numbers, so I'm going to divide both of these by 2. And we end up with 16 over 1, which of course we know is just 16 as our final answer. So there are all the steps that we've gone through there. So it's all just about cutting down. It doesn't really matter how quickly you can do that, as long as you can see even numbers, see things ending with 5s, we know to use 5 then. 3 can be a bit tricky, and 4 and things, but as long as you can cut down, may take a little bit longer, but again, going through this process, while it takes a while, we know that we're getting to the correct solution. So keep practicing with those. I'm sure it'll come to you pretty quickly.